Well, the problem with having Linda Fairstein on is that, unfortunately, her area of expertise is always too timely. Today is the debut of her 13th novel. It's called Silent Mercy. It is up to par with all the rest and a great book in and of itself. But Linda Fairstein, and it's no secret to her, she's one of my heroes. She was the chief of the sex crimes unit of the DA's office in Manhattan for over 2 decades and is America's foremost legal expert on crimes of sexual assault and domestic violence. And Linda, I don't know if you've been keeping touch with the news, but here in Connecticut, over the weekend, we apprehended a fiend in New Haven who appears to be somebody who is a serial sexual assaulter. And again and again, and I'm on the advisory board now for Jane Doe No More, we are just faced with these sick creeps that just keep coming out of the woodwork.
Well, I followed this case closely. I actually wrote about it for Cosmos 6 months ago when nobody had a clue, but we knew that DNA had linked so many of the cases. And with Mariska Hargitay, whom you know of Law & Order SVU, we have a backlog, End the Backlog project, and I am thoroughly convinced that Aaron Thomas, the man who's been arrested in New Haven for this 14-year crime spree, will be connected to other cases once the states on his truck route have uploaded some of the backlog cases. It is a heinous crime, and I've been watching it with great fascination for more than a year.
I mean, now that we've got him, hopefully he'll never see the light of day again.
That's correct. That's correct.
But I just reported on this I don't know if you saw this obscure thing, a 78-year-old man in Louisiana elected to be castrated surgically, not chemically, in order to get out of jail in Louisiana because that's what he was able to do. And I actually asked several different doctors if being castrated would do it. In other words, there's always been this theory that, eunuchs didn't have a sex drive, but you don't need to penetrate to commit a crime of sexual assault, and I always thought it was in the head. Do you have any idea if this will...
I'm 100% with you. I did see the squib about that case, and this article, because 10, 15 years ago, the vogue in many, particularly southern states, was the move to chemical castration in exchange for a lighter sentence. And every expert I talked to, just like you, agrees that that's not the driving force, and that you can fondle, you can do far less invasive things that are completely inappropriate, without detailing them all,
right,
that have nothing to do with the ability to penetrate. So I think it's a real bargain with the devil, and no good can come of it.
No good can come. So you would not, as a prosecutor, ever offer a plea that in exchange for whatever, let somebody out of jail?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I want you on the Supreme Court, Linda. I don't know why you're not. I don't know why you're not.
You're my only vote, Lisa.
No, I'm not. I'm sure. You know why I want you on? First of all, I want you on because of your general competency, but also because I can't see either a Republican or a Democrat objecting to you. I think you would go through. I think you would just sail right through. Who's going to object to you? The Republicans always carry on that they have to be tough on crime. Nobody's tougher on crime than you. And you're a woman, and you're a card-carrying member, I think, of some of the Democratic Party faithful. I can't see why anybody would object to you. I want to see you one day on the Supreme Court. That's just...
Well, thank you, but then I couldn't write my crime novels anymore.
No, maybe you could. No, maybe you could.
I don't know.
So we'll talk.
They let me. Okay.
All right, so let's talk about Silent Mercy, which is your latest and greatest, and it's wonderful. And one of the signatures of your novels is that you bring New York institutions to life.
Thank you. It's what I love to do, and this time, my attention was captured. For a long time, I've been interested in the houses of worship in Manhattan, which has been called an island of churches. There are just these great, you go all the way down to Wall Street, and the history of Trinity Church and St. Paul's, when the island was first populated downtown, and you go all the way up to St. John the Divine and Riverside Church and the great institutions in the city. And the book opens, as you know, on the steps of Mount Nebo, a famed Baptist church in Harlem, and I was stunned visiting there one day to look up and see that in this Baptist church there were Stars of David and Hebrew letters in the stained glass windows. And it was explained to me that at one point in time, more than 100 years ago, that neighborhood, that part of Harlem, was entirely a Jewish community. And so there are a dozen, complete surprise to me, but a dozen buildings built as synagogues, decorated as synagogues, dedicated as synagogues, that are now churches of different religious denominations. And
it wasn't surprising to me because my grandma still was born and raised in Harlem. Sylvia Miller Levy. Yeah.
Okay. So you knew more than I, but that still remains one of the more surprising elements as people are beginning to preview the book and review the book. And that's the kind of thing, as you know, that I love to find and sort of scratch the surface on in these stories.
I know, and in this book, and forgive me if I don't recall Alex Cooper really bringing her Jewish identity into the plot so much, but in this one there is a theme recurring of her involvement with various people and touching on the religious sensitivities of this case, particularly the Catholic Church.
Yes, and it was something once I decided that the institutions would be the backdrop, I really didn't have any plan to get so deeply into different religious beliefs, and it just became inevitable. The things going on as I did my research and my reading, things going on in different sects and different religions, just captured my attention and kind of made me go in a direction, some of which will be controversial, clearly, but all of which is based on fact, comes from news stories, I spent a huge amount of time at the Jewish Theological Seminary, at Union Theological Seminary, at Old St. Patrick's Cathedral. So I did all my research. I talked to women priests. I talked to some of the nuns who've been silenced. The title Silent Mercy comes from a practice in churches that's short of excommunication, but silencing people when church fathers believe they've been inappropriate. So it's it's a murder mystery. It's meant to be a thriller, but
right.
It's got a very serious theme underneath.
Well, I was really surprised when you say that this is the summer of 2010. And we're now so you must have literally sort of been putting this to bed very recently. You talk about the Vatican issuing a new law that put on par with pedophilia, trying to ordain women as priests.
I mean, it's shocking to me. I was two-thirds of the way through the book, and that newspaper story appeared. And, of course, I just, easy to make revisions to get that in. It was not the central theme, but it was right in line with where I was going. And so that frequently happens to me, that once something's in my scope, every news story that pops up that's related, I mean, some you discard, some have no greater relevance and aren't that interesting, but that just fascinated me. It's 2010, and look what we're doing in this church about women. I mean, it's such a bigoted
attitude.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, let's just say it. I mean, I'm not Catholic, obviously, but I acknowledge, and I think that you do a nice job of acknowledging as well. I do it on the air all the time, the bigotry within the Orthodox community of Jews. I mean,
exactly, and that's one of my first victim is experiencing that, and it's you can't point the finger at one without the other. And what's amazing about so many religions is, at the heart of it, the same problem. And as different as the espoused beliefs are, and doing good for people and serving the people whose faces we represent, there's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy.
Tremendous amount, and the more fundamentalist you get, whether you be Mormon or Islamic or Jewish or Christian, it seems to be in line with a certain role prescribed for women, which women cannot get out of.
Right, exactly right.
So,
exactly right.
And it's interesting to me because it's funny you should say this about how you were almost finished or two-thirds of the way through and then an article came and you zigzagged. It always seems to me, and I think it's one of your gifts, that when your novels come out, they're talking about things that are so recently in the news. I think you have a gift for writing about what's coming.
Sometimes, thank you, Lisa, sometimes it's forensics where I'm in early because of my interest in the field and how long I've worked in the field, and I stay current, and so I know what the cutting edge next tool is going to be, and sometimes that's been the break before it's actually become used in law enforcement. And sometimes like this, and in my book, The Bone Vault, which I love because it's the one about the Museum of Natural History and human bones, I mean, I got in on the ground floor of the story of the fact that there are human bones from third world countries collecting shells in every natural history museum in this country. Just them being able to identify them by DNA and return them to the graves from which they were stolen in the last century, when it was perfectly acceptable to do that for sociologists.
Oh, that's interesting.
I love staying, once I get on a theme, then I'm on it till the minute the book is published.
And that bone thing reminds me of Rebecca Skloot's thing with the cells.
Yes. And I have to tell you, if I may tell you
Sure.
a personal story, I went to summer camp, like many kids do, for years and years and years, from the sleepaway camp in the Pocono Mountains. And there were a lot of Skloots at the camp, and it's a fairly unusual name, Skloot from Brooklyn. And I had a mad crush on the one who was my age, Floyd Skloot. And so when I saw Rebecca's book previewed with great excitement more than a year ago in Publishers Weekly, I kept an eye on it to see if there was any bio. And we crossed paths days apart in Memphis last year on our respective book tours, and I left her a note. I bought the book long before that, read it. I think it's fabulous. I'm so glad it's a fascinating show. All your listeners really need to hear her. It's just a brilliant book and a lively conversation I'm sure you will have. And I left her a note, and I said, by the way, if your father's Floyd Skloot who went to Camp Rosemont, I had a mad crush on him when I was 16. And she said, no, what, she wrote me the cutest inscription with, you have good taste. I'm glad you did. And then we reconnected through email briefly. But I just, the success of this book has been phenomenal, and just what a triumph for her, and what an amazing story, well told.
Amazing story, well told. But just think, in a different world, roads not taken, you could have been her mother.
That's right.
You see,
it's a sweet thought.
You never know. Listen,
you don't know.
Wouldn't be terrible to have an accomplished daughter like Rebecca, right?
Not at all. Not in the least bit.
Not at all. So, Linda, today is the big day. First of all, thank you for being on the Lisa Wexler Show to inaugurate your book. I'm flattered. I'm privileged. I'm so thrilled. And
you've been so great to me and such a good friend over the years. I couldn't think of a better place to help launch it.